Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Harris, and today I'm talking to author Crissie and Leonard. Crissie's debut novel, Letters to My Father, is already receiving high praise. The novel is a touching, heartwarming, and uplifting novel about God and holding on to Him while you're in despair. Willetta Jane is a God-loving woman in the midst of a spiritual drought. Her strong relationship with God has been disrupted by her chaotic lifestyle, and she feels lonely and lost. Willetta feels a strong pull to visit a garage sale where she finds a small stack of letters for sale. Knowing they are meant for her, she buys them and begins reading through them. She discovers personal stories of despair, loneliness, joy, and more. God then instructs her to find the authors of these letters, so she reaches out to her best friend Faith, who is a private investigator. Together, Willetta and Faith set out to find these people, help them to know God's love, and heal their hearts so they can seek Him again. Hi, Chrissie. First of all, welcome, and thank you for coming to talk to me on Book Talk Radio Club.
Thanks, Claire. I'm very excited to be here today.
Chrissie, I absolutely love the idea of this story. What was your inspiration for Letters to My Father?
Claire, I wanted to show God in a relatable way within situations that every reader could identify with, because they are struggles people experience in life.
Mm-hmm.
Then I included the scripture within the stories to inspire believers to open their Bibles again, and for non-believers to be curious enough to want to pick up a Bible.
I understand Letters to My Father started off as a horror novel born in a thunderstorm. Very dramatic, but a very different story. Why such an extreme change?
It's true. People are always shocked by this comment.
Yeah.
I had an idea for a horror story centered around a graveyard and a chemist, and when the thunderstorm came, it provided the perfect setting to write this story. So I picked up my pen and paper, and I prayed to God for the right words, and then I became so engrossed in the writing that I really wasn't even paying any attention to what I was actually writing. And I wrote for hours, and then I was so exhausted I just went to bed. And then the next morning, I read what I wrote, because I was really excited to see how that whole scenario turned out. But to my surprise, not a single word about the horror story idea was even on the paper.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I know, it was crazy. But instead of the horror story, these stories spoke of people suffering and their search for answers to why these things had happened to them. So I always chuckle that I had a plan for that night, but God had a much different plan for a story.
Very
It's
much
always
so.
comical.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Willetta Jane is a God-loving woman in the midst of a spiritual drought due to a chaotic lifestyle. What's happened to her?
Well, life happened to her. Work, helping others, and then all the serving that she does, it takes up so much of her time. And because she is so busy, she really leaves little time for anything else in her life. And unfortunately, that means including her time that she would spend with God.
Tell me about Willetta's character. What kind of woman is she?
Oh, Willetta, she's a character. She has a larger-than-life, go-big or go-home personality. Willetta, in her essence, she is a giver, as many women generally are.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a giver to the point where she gives more of herself than there is actually enough to give.
Right.
So true.
Like most
so
women. Like most women.
Right, like most women. But she's also caring and quirky. You know, she loves freely, but earning her trust is not an easy task for her based on things that have happened in her past life. But she really does love God, and she just wants others to experience Him in their own lives.
She asks her best friend Faith, a private eye, to help her and discover the writers of these letters. Can you give us an idea of two of the letters, starting off with the letter of despair, then joy?
Sure, I definitely can. So I think one of the best letters of despair would be Katerina's. Hers focuses on miscarriages, and I really don't want to say more than that because it would be giving away the plot of her story.
Right.
But it is one of the ones I call the heavy hitters in the middle of the book.
Right.
They just pull you in, and you're just kind of stuck there. And then the joy, that would definitely be Joseph, the little boy that's in the book. His focus is on loneliness, but his joy comes from being sent a friend, and then he finds a hobby that brings him joy and puts him on a very different path in life. So that one really is the joy, and he's the beginning letter that brings you in to the heavy hitters, and so he's kind of the uplifting to get you into, where you're going to sit and stay for a while.
These letters that Willetta finds must have been hard for you to write. Did you base them on times that you have experienced, both good and bad?
They were difficult to write. To convey what emotions that I wanted the characters to experience, I had to really revisit some painful memories and draw from those painful times. So it wasn't easy. I was very resistant at the beginning to go back to those times in my life.
Sure.
But I knew to get the readers to experience the same emotions that the characters did, that I had to do that. I had to go back and pull from both the good and the bad times in my life to convey the deepness and pull the reader in so they feel like they're right there in the story.
Tell us a bit about Faith, Willetta's friend. What kind of personality does she have?
Well, I can tell you, I love Faith. She was a great character to do, but she's a very complex character. The life experiences she had should have hardened her outlook on her life, but yet she still looks for the positive in all the situations that she's in. She's a very logical thinker, which plays really well into her becoming a PI, but she also has a heart of gold, and she is definitely not afraid to be brutally honest with you. It's one of the traits I loved about Faith. She will also defend you, and she has her back. And when I was writing her, I always talk about having the three like Jesus had the three with him. And for me, she embodied the traits of Peter, who she'll fight for you. James was the truth teller, and John was the faithful friend from the Bible. And for me, that is what drove Faith's character.
So you've just given me the answer to the next question. Are the characters in the book based on people you know, or an amalgam of them?
Well, it's interesting. The issues the characters face are based on my experiences and people I've met along the way. The characters that are based on people in my life are actually only Willetta and Faith.
Right.
So the other characters I created as a way to write an ending to provide closure for the experiences that they had.
Right.
It was just my way as a writer to give a gift to those who experienced the suffering and perhaps prayed for a different outcome than what they had received.
I love that.
Yeah.
Crissie, you say on Amazon, I write Christian fiction to show people God's presence in their lives and all around them. If you don't mind me asking, why Christian fiction? Don't all people need to see God's presence in their lives and all around them?
This is really a great question, Claire. And, I had to think long and hard about answering this one. It's one I expect people to ask, but yet they never do. So deciding to focus my writing in Christian fiction, it was actually a twofold decision. First, within fiction, there's always a grain of truth. So you start with the underlying truth, and then you build your story around that.
Mm-hmm.
For letters, the truth is God's presence in your life and the situations that the characters face, because they're everyday situations. So then I added the fiction in a way to develop the characters' emotions, their journeys, and make them relatable to the people that were reading them. So what I love about fiction are there aren't many boundaries to restrain you within the story. Your imagination can run wild, and you can still produce an endearing and heartwarming story. So I wanted to present God in a way that everyone can see that happening in their lives, whether they were a believer or a non-believer. And the second part of that is, I'm a first-time author, and this was my first book, my first try at anything. And so I wanted to put out a Christian novel that would be taken seriously in the mainstream fiction world. And unless you're a well-known author actually a really tough field to navigate through. So I said to myself, hey, self, I want to present a story that everyone can relate to. This way I can reach more people with a Christian-centered message by showing them things they experience in everyday situations. And within those situations is God's presence, whether you're a believer or a non-believer. And a lot of times we just overlook him in our everyday lives. So for me, it was very important that the story of the Bible stays the same, and what it teaches us stays the same, but only the storyteller changes when it comes to that.
Let's talk a little bit about Crissie and Leonard now. Your author bio states, God found me when I wasn't looking for him. At first I ran from him, but he continued to pursue me. Can you explain that, please?
I sure can, and this is pretty personal. My first experience with God was actually during a really dark period in my life. I just couldn't handle the pain and all the unhappiness in my life, and I felt so lost as a person. There was this longing deep down inside of me that I could never seem to fulfill, and I could never figure out what it was. And because everything was just happening, I contemplated suicide. For me, that was the only way to free me from the darkness that overtook my life.
Yep.
So that night, after my mom, she was the one that had to come and rescue me, I saw a vision of Jesus, and he just told me, this is not the life I had planned for you. So it was crazy, and because I knew of God, like I knew of him, I knew what everybody taught you in Bible school, but I wasn't saved at the time that I had the vision. And for me, it was just like, what is happening?
Sure.
And so, I didn't understand. I wasn't saved, and I just continued on that path of self-destruction. And I made terrible decisions that sometimes really put myself in harm's way. And each time, it was just crazy, Claire. Something would happen, or someone would come into my life, and it would just change the course of where I was heading.
Right.
And and it's just, during another painful time in my life, I heard those exact same words of, this is not the life that I had planned for you. And at this time, I was a little older, getting much more mature, and I was invited to a church, and, I went, and I kept going, and in time, I did give my life over to God, and this time, I understood what was happening, and he spoke to me about my purpose and what he had planned for me, and then I understood why he saved me when all I wanted to do was die. I just wanted to be gone, but he didn't want that. So looking back now, I see that God, he was intervening in my life to save me really, truly from myself.
Yeah.
And my terrible decisions, because he had a purpose for me to fulfill in ways that I just never imagined would happen.
You've devoted your life to helping people through God's help and guidance, which of course is wonderful. In what capacity do you offer help?
I love this question. I believe we're meant to give back and to pour into others as God pours into us.
Absolutely.
I give to others financially. I'll offer encouragement to people. I mentor other authors. And I believe in others when they don't even believe in themselves, because when I didn't believe in me, there were strong people in my life that did believe in me. And I just feel like that is so important. And so I try to help others see that they truly are worthy and destined for greatness in God's kingdom, that is where the greatness happens.
I love that. Having had a look at your Facebook author page, I see that you're giving an author talk at Violet's Baptist Church this coming Saturday. Would you like to tell us what you're going to cover in your author talk?
I sure will. I'll discuss the process of writing the book and what it took to get it there, and where I drew my inspiration for the stories, because I think that's important for people to know that you do have a connection to your stories that you're writing.
Yeah.
And I really want to talk about the undercurrent in the book, which is the friendship between Willetta and Faith. You know, they're best friends and they've been through a lot, and things are alluded to in there on purpose, but also how their friendship was tested by Willetta's addiction. And that is a strong point in there in one of the stories where it is developed, and you get to see a little bit of the toll it took on each one of them. And then, as always, I'll take questions from the guests and answer anything they have and share what they would want me to share.
Oh, well, I wish you lots of luck. I'm sure it'll be a success.
I hope so.
Chrissie, do you have a favourite place to write? And if so, where?
I actually do. I love to write in the quiet rooms in the library. So they're just rooms where the doors close and you cannot have your phones on. They can't even be on vibrate. Everybody has headphones on. And it's very peaceful. But, you know, I've loved books ever since I was little.
Yeah.
And I loved reading stories because they provided a way for me to escape life's challenges when I was younger and really wasn't equipped with the tools that you need to do that. And for me, being surrounded by those books, it takes me back to that peaceful feeling. And it also gives me the courage to just pick up the pen and write another story. And, you know, my motto is changing the world and adding to the kingdom one book at a time. So that's what I do when I'm at the library.
What's next for Crissie and Leonard?
Well, I don't tend to stop doing things, Claire. I'm always looking to break through, you know, bust through the glass ceilings that there are in the writing world. So I'm currently writing 2 books and a graphic novel. All of those will be Christian-based. And I'm actually excited, and this is the first time for this announcement. I'm excited to announce that I was contacted, and 2 screenwriters have chosen letters to my father. They're writing the script for a TV adaptation.
Wow.
So that's really exciting.
Fantastic.
You know, just another instance of what God can do if you give him the room to work.
Absolutely.
And then I also continue to work with my jewelry line, YMP, which stands for You're My Person Creations. And we're going to release a new heartbeat collection this fall.
Oh, that's brilliant. So where can Book Talk Radio Club listeners purchase Letters to My Father?
Well, they have multiple places they can purchase them. They can get them at Waterstones or my publisher, Westbow Press. Also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and then I'm also on the Christian site, so christianbook.com. And then many independent bookstores carry the book online. And then I also offer signed copies on my website, ChrissieLeonard.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Chrissie. That was great. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club when you've published your next book. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Lovely to speak to you, Chrissie.
Lovely speaking to you today, Claire.
Thank you. Bye now.